Stop jumping on me. Why are you doing that?
Having a bad dog day?
Rex, come back here.
From police dogs to pet dogs, from potty training to pet peeves, #1 best-selling author and 30-year canine trainer Andy Falco knows how to get to the meat of what's eating your dog. This is Falco Canine Dog Talk, the show that helps you and your dog create a relationship of love and respect.
What a good boy. Good heel, Rex. I love you, Rex.
And now here's your host, Andy Falco.
Hello. This is Andy over at Falco Canine Academy's Train the Dog Trainer program and Falco Canine's Dog Talk. Welcome, and thank you, Christopher, for such a nice introduction there on our intro music that comes on in. I'm still struggling not to say video or watch. I will stop soon. I just do so many videos that I cannot get that out of my head. And forgetting this is only an audio podcast, I'm struggling with that a bit. And so this episode is going to be talking about the value of teaching, and I don't want to take that for granted. You know, back when I was a canine handler at Anaheim Police Department and first got noticed for some interest and skill, I guess I was showing in regard to training dogs and human beings, I began to run our monthly and weekly training with our own handlers. And a couple of new guys would ask me some questions, so then I would respond, or they would say, hey, I have this problem, what do you think? And I began to get into what would be considered the trainer area of this dog world stuff, especially in regard to police dogs. And then I also got noticed by an international canine conference group who the founder saw me at a canine competition, saw that we had success. We had a couple of conversations. And the next thing you know, he had asked me if I wanted to be one of the instructors at the International Police Canine Conferences. And I did. And it was amazing that up to that point, for whatever it was, 5 years or so as a canine decoy, then a canine handler, I was learning stuff by doing and observing. And then my growth as a trainer and my knowledge began to grow exponentially once I began teaching. So if you don't know this, teaching really is a great way to learn. And it sounds really strange. If you're the one teaching, you should be teaching other people, and other people should be learning from you. But little did I know, I found out later that I guess there has been a number of studies done on this, and I don't know now how big the number is, but I know that I've read writings about it online and both in magazines, and that the act of teaching somebody else actually creates knowledge in the teacher, and both obviously gains experience in the act of teaching, but they gain knowledge in what it is they're teaching by teaching, because you are going to be putting yourself, and again, I'm sure there's a lot of other reasons than what I'm going to bring up, but I know for sure, because this is what happens with me, when I'm teaching, I get confronted with problems that I have to solve. And sometimes I know the answer right away because I've done it before, or I have to figure out and compute, I guess, all the data and then spit out through words or action what the solution is for the problem, even though that I'd never been encountered by that specific problem before. But as you do it more and more, your brain gets trained to pull out the files out of whatever drawer that they're in, and you begin to now put them together and use them. And so your brain begins to be used for this concept of problem solving and creating a knowledge base for fixing issues that people bring to you, and then thereby your knowledge of training increases even though you are teaching. And so what I don't want you to do is what took me years to figure out, which was probably, 5 years after I started teaching at the canine conferences. I go, wow, I really know a lot of stuff. I guess the other advantage is I was working with other fantastic trainers, and we were able to network a little bit some of our information, and say Billy Knott or Bob Wright or Mark Ficadenti would be my training partner, and they would say, "Hey, I've seen this before. This is what we did for that." And then, okay, and I'll say, "Good." I go, "There's one little part that I like to do," and we end up pulling our information together and come up with a solution. And so, when you're partnered with somebody and teaching as a team, that also then increases it even, I think, even tenfold. I mean, it just really a rapid growth that you are now combining two minds that have experience and creating one solution. And you're doing it because you're working with another person. They bring their knowledge to the table. You bring your knowledge to the table, and now you can bring a whole, not necessarily a new concept. It's really hard to say that there's anything new in dog training. There's just things that happen to get brought up that maybe you haven't heard before or seen before, but somebody else has probably done it or doing it. So I'm here to tell you that once you've had these dogs under your belt that I've suggested over the last few podcasts that you do, there at some point you need to, if you're going to really grow exponentially is a great word. If you're going to really begin to grow, you're going to have to now find people that you're going to teach. So let's say that you are training your neighbor's dog because you follow the direction to find a friend or family's dog and begin just working with them and training them to sit, down, stay, come, all the normal stuff. and you're doing a good job and you're seeing a difference. Now what you need to do is bring your neighbor in and teach them what you did and teach them how they can maintain the behaviors that you were able to create through the techniques that you were using with their dog. And now really paying attention. I didn't pay attention to what I was doing early on. It wasn't until later that I really began to pay attention and back to journaling again. I know that some of you kind of roll your eyes probably and think that's why would I do that? That's a lot of work. But sitting down for about an hour in journaling what you learned and saw and felt and heard and tasted, I guess, even that could even happen. I'm not sure how, but I'll think of something in the future. All of those stimulus, writing down what it was. What was the weather like when you were doing this thing? What was the surface like that you were training the dog on? Was it on grass? Was it on asphalt? Was it on cement? Where was the human being? What's one of the traits that they have out of those 5 personalities that we pointed out at the last episode? Which one do they have? What is the dog's personality like? Is he, a hothead? Is he mild mannered? Is he fearful? Is he confident? Writing these things down, and then you're putting down the information that you're going to be able to look at from a 100-foot point of view and see all like, oh wow, okay, I see what happened here. Then what'll end up happening is that now you're going to be able to say, okay, now that worked on grass, where the dog feels most comfortable. He can dig in his nails. He can do all that stuff. What difference do I see when I'm working on asphalt with this same dog on the same problem? What difference do I see from this dog when we're working on slick floors and PetSmart? Not even PetSmart. Let's go somewhere else. Let's go to another place with slick floors. The kitchen of the owner's home, or a basketball court that happens to be nearby that you're able to use. And then maybe to PetSmart, where there's a potential of other dogs that are going to be present in the sights and sounds found inside of a store. How does that change the training? How does it change the learning of the dog? How does it change the learning of the human being? And journaling, and then you're going to be coming up with all these things and say, what's really interesting? What I found is, and this is you talking to yourself, or after looking at what it is that you wrote down, that I've noticed that some people struggle when we're in a public place. Now that's easy, right? Many people struggle in a public place because they get embarrassed. They feel uncomfortable doing stuff in front of somebody else. They don't like that you are telling them what to do in front of other people. There's something that happens. The dynamics change when you're in a public environment as opposed to when you are by yourselves in the corner of a park where there was nobody around to see you, right? And then you see how that changes, whether the dog is obedient or not, whether the dog learns well or not, whether the dog maintains the behavior for longer periods of times or shorter periods of times. And you're going to begin to formulate all this information. And by writing it down in your journal and being aware of it and conscious of it, it's going to be something you can just remember it. It'll become part of who you are as a dog trainer, and you may at some point never even need to think about it again. You're just going to know. You're going to see something happening. You're going, you know what? Why that's happening is because it's at night, and this dog is not a twilight dog. The dog, works more efficiently during the day or in the morning or whatever. Again, these are extreme examples, but you can see my point. The dog will do this at home in a quiet environment that the dog is familiar with, but the dog won't do this in a public environment where the dog is unsure about himself. The handler acts different, and in this particular situation, the dog was in a PetSmart where there's other dogs, and so you see this marked difference, and so now you need to know where the training needs to go. But you're only going to learn this kind of stuff by doing it, right? If you spend all your time learning about training dogs on a green grassy field that has a fence around it and it's 50 feet by 100 feet, you're going to see something completely different. If you've only been doing that there, you're going to say, that's where you're training the dogs and your group obedience takes place. If you were to actually go somewhere with that handler and that dog that's in the class and go with them to a store, you're going to possibly see a completely different dog. But if you know that in advance, you can now be the expert in your class that's on that green grassy field with a fence around it and say, what you need to do is take what we are applying here, and now you need to slowly begin to apply it in situations like PetSmart or Petco. And then you're going to say, because this is often what we see. We see that the dogs sometimes are weakened by being in that type of environment, or they're stronger by being in that type of environment. And so you're going to now need to be aware of that. This is you talking to the customer, and you're basing that off your experience. You're basing that off of teaching people in various environments, so that you're beginning to learn how people react differently based on where they're at, based on what the weather is, possibly based on whether it's nighttime or daytime. There's so much to be learned. So just to review, let's take everything that you've followed. Let's say that you follow everything I've said at this point, right? That you begin to get dogs under your belt. You're going to rescues and shelters where you're working specifically with the dogs and learning about dogs. You're journaling all that, and now you're let's bring in the humans, either the foster parent for a dog, or the owner of a dog, or your neighbor and their dog, or your family member and their dog, and now you're going to teach them what it is that you did. You're going to teach them about the equipment, why you chose that equipment. You're going to teach them about how to get their dog to do the same thing for them, because quite often the dog will do it for you, but probably will not do it for their human, because they have not been taught how to do it in a way the dog understands. To the dog, the human that they live with is completely different than the human that they're training with, which would be you in this circumstance. And so you need to make sure that you give that customer clear information that they're going to listen to, and you're going to pay attention to when it is they're listening, when they're not, because you can do that. I know when somebody, and I'm speaking to them, is actually listening to me, and then when they're not. And sometimes you need to shake them up and say, okay, go ahead and start. And they'll go, start what? I want you to do what I just talked about. Can you tell me again what that was? And they will begin to listen to you, because if you start doing that to them, they're going to not want to be put in that position where they don't know what it is that you've asked them to do. Right? And so this is where really, and I hate to say the saying, but I'm going to say it anyway, where the rubber meets the road. I hate that saying. But this is where it all begins to come together, right? Because I've told you before that the human being is the most important part of this business. It's not the dog, it is the human being. So you're going to learn about dogs. You're going to learn the personality traits, the 5 personality traits. You're now going to begin teaching people, and you're going to figure out who it is that you like working with. That's the next thing. You're going to learn about who it is you like working with and who you don't like working with. Maybe you like only working with men. Maybe you only like working with women. Maybe you only like working with children. Maybe you only like working with adults that are 30 and above. Whatever that is, this is where you're going to figure it out if you don't already know already. Because you're going to be putting yourself in positions now that you have to perform, and there's going to be times where you don't like performing for a particular group of people, or you don't feel comfortable. Maybe they're intimidating. Maybe you just don't. Maybe you just enjoy training women over men, or men over women, right? And so you're going to have to get out there and do this. You're going to gain knowledge. You're going to journal it down. You're going to figure out all the combinations now between dog and humans, and figure out what that means. If you're lucky, you'll have a family that has more than one dog in their family, and you'll see them working with the big German Shepherd dog, and then maybe with a smaller cockapoo or something like that, and seeing how they treat the dogs differently. And you're going to find different solutions for each one of the dogs. And so you're going to have to get out there and start experiencing what it's like to teach. All right. So that's what we need to take away from this podcast, is that teaching is powerful. It's a powerful learning tool for anybody who's going to be training any subject to anyone, right? So don't take it for granted. Make sure that you journal what you learned, what worked and what did not work. Those are really important things that you need to list. You're going to journal what you learned, what worked, and what didn't work. Those are really key points right there, okay? And there's a few more of the things that I talked about, who the people are, men, women, how old they are, again, what the weather's like, what the temperature is, day or night. And you're going to list these things down so that you can get a kind of a pattern for when it is that you work on at your best, and what type of people you really like working with, and what type of dogs you really like working with. All right? So begin to teach. Don't take it for granted. Get her done. All right, that's it for me here at Falco Canine Academy's Train the Dog Trainer program and Falco Canine Dog Talk. And I'm so happy that you've decided to listen to our podcast. So thank you very much. You know that you can listen to our podcast on Facebook at Train the Dog Trainer, on our Facebook page, Train the Dog Trainer. Go there and you will see the audio files that look like videos on our Facebook page. You can also find us on iTunes, called Andy Falco's Train the Dog Trainer Show. And where else? Shoot, what's it called? I already forgot what it's called. There's a couple other places. It's the Android one. I forget what it's called. Switcher or Twitch or something like that. I can't remember. I'll figure out and I'll get it to you. I'm a Mac person, so of course I know iTunes, and that comes to mind right away. But either way, I really appreciate your time and listening. And if you go to our Facebook page, it would be great if you commented on this particular podcast, and let me know what you think and what your thoughts are. That would be awesome. All right, so go ahead and feel free to do that. All right, that is it for me here on today's podcast, and I will talk to you later. Take care. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Falco Canine Dog Talk, the show that helps you and your dog create a relationship of love and respect. If you like what you just heard, we hope you'll pass along our web address at www.falcocanineacademy.com and like our Facebook page at facebook.com/Falco Canine Academy. Follow us on twitter.com/Falco Canine Academy and subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Falco143. And remember, if you've got questions for Andy, call the K9 line at 714-798-9961. That's 714-798-9961. This is a production of Falco Enterprises Incorporated. All rights reserved.